So when faced with last week's challenging gospel reading from the Sermon on the Mount, my husband, who's also a pastor, preached what's called a switch sermon. And it's incredibly difficult to pull off. It's something similar to what the Apostle Paul does in the book of Romans in certain sections, where he'll build and build and build an argument. And just when you think that he's led you to only one logical conclusion, he shouts, "By no means," and reminds you that everything that he's just finished saying is totally the wrong track. And since last week's reading from the Sermon on the Mount included Jesus saying, "If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off," my husband's sermon included him throwing a fake arm out from behind the pulpit. These are the stories that I can tell you now that I don't have to be self-conscious anymore about my own preaching, since I only have 2 weeks left. I can share with you all these stories about my husband's antics. But I bring up switch sermons because I wish that the Sermon on the Mount was one, particularly this section. If I'm being honest, when Jesus says things like turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, give to anyone who asks you, and love your enemies, most of the time, I wish he was kidding. Like today, when I was behind the slowest driver on the planet on the way here this morning. And I wish he was kidding, not because these are unworthy goals to work towards, but because they are incredibly hard to live out in practice. And this seems like the perfect switch sermon. Because when Jesus first starts, you think, okay, sure, Jesus, I can get on board with 1 or 2 of these things, but you can't be serious about all of them, right? Right? And then there's that ending. I mean, come on. Be perfect. Therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Where's the grace? Where's the by no means? Where's the just kidding? Well, let me give you some good news. While Jesus isn't kidding, I don't think that he expects perfection either. Jesus is taking the ancient laws of the Jewish people, and he's helping them to understand what these laws mean in more modern times. So he's raising the bar. He's issuing a challenge, and he's pretty serious about it, as we should be as well. But he doesn't expect perfection. Perfection is a scary word for most of us, at least it is for me. And thankfully, there are plenty of other possible translations for this Greek word that the gospel writer uses. For example, complete or mature. So in all likelihood, the Jewish people who heard these words would likely not have been quite so overburdened by them as some of us might be when we hear them. They would understand the larger point more easily, that if you live by these teachings, you are creating a community that is closer to the one that God imagines, one that is more mature or more complete of an understanding of what it means to usher in the kingdom of God. So taking away then that goal of perfection, what is Jesus trying to tell us this morning? How can we take these teachings and apply it to our modern lives. And what I want you to hear this morning clearly is that doing any one of these things makes a difference. There is a subversive nature to everything that Jesus is suggesting here. These actions are so difficult precisely because they are the opposite of how the world usually works, both then and now. And because they are surprising and unexpected, they make a big impact. Most importantly, these actions, living this way, breaks cycles. By doing these things, even some of the time, you are breaking the cycle. And the importance of that cannot be overstated. Because when we break the cycle of violence, the cycle of harsh words, the cycle of selfishness and retribution, when we break those cycles, God has a chance to break into our world and transform it. This ties in perfectly with our reading from 1 Corinthians. When Paul says that our bodies are a temple, he doesn't just mean that we should take care of ourselves. The you is actually plural. So what he's saying is that God's Spirit dwells in our communities, giving us the power to live differently, both as individuals and as communities. Paul's letter reminds us that we have the power as the church to model a better way. Because God's Spirit is with us, we can practice here inside these walls, we can practice the more difficult things that Jesus asks of us. And then once we've practiced here, we are equipped to model them for our friends and neighbors and co-workers. The advice that Jesus gives in this part of the Sermon on the Mount is more than just a laundry list of suggested behaviors. Love your enemies is just as much a statement of belief as it is a command. It's a reminder that as Christians we are different. It makes a claim of truth. And that claim is that evil is only overcome with good, not with a stronger version of evil. And we have both the power and the responsibility to show that truth to the world. We practice it here, and then we carry it out. Each of us has the power to break the cycle with a friend or a relative, with a neighbor or a coworker. And in a way, this section of the sermon really is a switched sermon. Because when Jesus says at the very beginning, do not resist the evildoer, he certainly doesn't mean just stand idly by and watch as someone causes harm. Instead, Jesus calls us to resist, but to do so subversively. To do so in a way that changes the narrative, a way that breaks the cycle. Here, Jesus redefines what resistance looks like. It looks like turning the other cheek instead of hitting back. It looks like going 2 miles when you are forced to go one. It looks like giving not just what is asked for or demanded of you, but even more. It looks like giving whenever someone asks, not just when it's convenient. It means loving and praying for your enemies so that God can transform your heart and help you see the evil more clearly as you separate out the parts that are good from the parts that are evil, because the good is there too. And when you do any one of these things, you are doing your part. You are planting a seed. Paul tells us in Corinthians that he planted and Apollos watered, but God gives the growth. When you work to break the cycle, you are planting a seed or watering a seed that was planted for you. And when you break the cycle, even just a little bit, when you do that unexpected thing, God breaks in. And God transforms the situation in a way that previously seemed impossible. But with God, nothing is impossible. Thanks be to God. Amen.